And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Radio Network at coalitionradionetwork.com, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. Folks, if you're listening for the first time and kind of give us a test, put us on trial tonight. But if you have a moment after the show's over, if you could like us or follow us or subscribe to us in virtually every form of social media imaginable, we'd be grateful. These are times of crisis. These are times of challenge. These are times of change. Let's get right to the point. Joining us tonight is someone who is clearly beyond a repeat offender status. At this point in time, she's actually formally invited to the Christmas party. Brenda Jacob joins us tonight. She is virtually with everybody in terms of protecting your divine right, your life right, your natural right to bear arms in self-defense. She's with virtually every sporting organization. Say she acts as a lobbyist, full disclosure, an unpaid lobbyist, I might add, volunteer. Up at the State House, she's involved with training young marksmen for the Olympics. She's involved with a number of organizations that involve safety and training, both for women's groups as well as for young people. So as a result, she represents virtually every aspect of the sporting life, but simultaneously putting up a reasoned, rational, one might even say common sense defense, again, of your right to bear arms. Brenda, welcome back to the show. I guess this is, for lack of a better term, round two in terms of your State House follies held every year up at, as we refer to it, Halitosis Hall, Mordor, you name it. We could also call it the State House. Tuesday, my understanding, that's when it's coming up. We're going to talk about tonight, testifying. We're going to talk about some of the legislation that's up for your consideration, but ultimately for their decision. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us on a Friday night.
Thank you again.
So, first of all, let's talk about the issue, if you will. Tuesday night, what's happening, what bills are up for consideration, and what can people still sign up for in terms of participation in the festivities?
It's Monday night.
Oh, Monday night, sorry.
Actually Monday night, yeah.
Yikes.
They did not give us a lot of time, and they also, I don't know even how they're going to pull this together because, all of the verbal testimony, you need to be signed up by 4:00 on Sunday afternoon, and all of the written testimony has to be in by 2:00 on Monday afternoon. So
nice.
I know that takes a lot of organization on their part for the verbal testimony. So they must have people working double time all weekend because
that's it. I'm watching for vast squads of pizza trucks. Oh, that's right. No one even really goes to the State House anymore. So I'm sure, right. I'm sure amongst the scenic climes of places like Johnston and Pawtucket that all of these folks will be laboring the entire weekend, making sure that, in fact, the civil liberties, the constitutional rights, and just a general sense of propriety will be observed for all Rhode Island taxpayers. Fair enough? Is that what we see happening?
Yeah, it's something else. We have 21 bills on deck for Monday. There's probably 8 bad bills, 9 good bills, and 4 we're kind of neutral on. But that gives citizens are going to get 1 minute to speak total, not on each bill, 1 minute to speak total. So that gives you about 2.86 seconds per bill. They are going to let 2 experts speak for 5 minutes. So that breaks down to about 14.29 seconds per bill. So, I mean, they're really going all out this time, letting us have all sorts of time to talk about things that are just so important. It's just mind-boggling.
They are holding our government hostage. We had Blake Filippi on the other night, and he pointed out, as he does so, and has done so quite often throughout this entire plague, that in no way should bills of this import, and I'm talking about gun legislation, I'm talking about the new Green Deal, I'm talking about voting rights, should be considered, discussed, or even contemplated in an environment where the average citizen will get 2 to 3 seconds to talk. I'm a little older than most of the listeners here, and it is by far the most disgusting, hostage-taking, assassination of civil liberties that I've seen in my lifetime. This is beyond the example, as we often would joke about, never letting a good crisis go to waste. This is nothing more than them extending a gigantic middle finger to all of us who are in the liberty community who believe in the exercise of one's rights. Has anyone as a lobbyist, you have a little bit more contact with these folks. Most of these folks, I think, at this point have some sort of restraining order against me. Something about not, that's one of those chuckles like, yeah, you're not joking, are you, Pat? But by the way, I just want to, this is, we're approaching another campaign season. Will it be 6 years in a row that no single candidate stops at my house? You think there's a list? But sorry, indulge me. So has anyone even attempted to rationalize this behavior, or is it just they're going to push through whatever they can get away with?
Yeah, that's what they're doing there. We've been trying to get them to give us more time. We've been trying to get them to let us have more experts speak. We've been asking them to, not hold the hearings until we can actually be in person. They're just not hearing it. And they're so emboldened this year because they know that they have, they're claiming that they have enough votes to get all these bills through. So they're very emboldened. So they're not really caring what what the voters are even trying to convey to them. They're blatantly not listening to us, ignoring us. In some cases, we've even had to call the speaker and let him know that some of these legislators aren't even returning our phone calls or emails, because they just don't care. And that is so frustrating and so unfair. We are not being represented up there at all by a lot of legislators.
And yet, because of the statist nature of Rhode Island, it's virtually impossible to dethrone. There was on a serious note, there was a passing in the world's other monarchy today or yesterday over in England. The current monarchy that exists here in Rhode Island appears to remain intact and withstand any pressure whatsoever to exhibit even a level of decency. I would invite politely, of course, all Rhode Islanders to just begin the phone calls tonight. It's still early enough, till about 9 o'clock, and then start tomorrow. The phone numbers are all up on the state legislative website. They're there. These are published phone numbers. Yeah. You're entitled to make one call to each of these people when they answer. And it needs to be a polite call, but it needs to be firm. They need to open up before they even consider the legislation, and most of this we're going to go through, but before they even consider it, they need to open up government. They just do. There is no excuse whatsoever for them to sealing us off. This is taxation without representation, plain and simple. Mm-hmm. But you had a thought, and then let's get into some of the legislation up on the Senate side.
Well, they, just in case anybody wants to know, it's rifle.org that we're using that website again, RIFOL.org. And that you can link to the legislative tab on that. And that brings up where you can sign up for your verbal testimony and you can sign up for your written testimony. We have some pre-written message there, but feel free to put in your own words, and also make sure you list your name and address, because we all know that the anti-moms, they all have out-of-staters calling in. So if we put our name and full address in there, they know that we're actually constituents and not, out-of-state people. So it's very important. Last time we had 16,000 people sign up for the House hearing. So we need to at least hit that number again. And we need a lot more people to sign up for verbal testimony. And the good thing about it being on the phone, for people who haven't testified before, you don't have to worry about being in front of a panel like in a courtroom. Now you can just write out what you want to say, and then when the phone call comes for you to testify, you can just read right off your notes. So, you don't have to be so nervous about it. And I can't even emphasize enough how important it is for people to please call and sign up for verbal testimony and do your written testimony, and do it for every single bill, because they need to be heard. They're not listening to us yet. So we need to make sure that we make a statement by just the time that we're putting into signing up for verbal testimony and doing written testimony.
Yeah, it's a shame that you have to approach the throne in such a manner. How bad? Now we have anyone who watches this network knows that we've had you on a number of times. In addition to Jen Moffitt, we've gone through a lot of the legislation. The Senate, by definition, has got its own bills, and when similar bills pass on both sides of the House, they go through what's called a reconciliation process, and and then they pass on final law. But there are different flavors here and different nuances. So let's in the time we've got, let's start with the most egregious. Let's start with the worst of the worst in terms of legislation. From your perspective, what bill holds that honor?
I would say the assault weapons ban. And the reason that one is so dangerous, well, for one, this is already the companion bill to what has been heard in the House Judiciary. So this is like fast tracking. The assault weapon ban is plain out deceitful. It actually bans almost every firearm out there just by definition. In the definition, it says that anything with a threaded barrel, well, that's any shotgun that has any type of a choke or modified choke. It says anything that has an adjustable butt plate, and that's all your ARs. It's a lot of shotguns have adjustable plates. All my kids, the Junior Olympic rifles, all have adjustable butt plates. Anything with a bayonet, well, a bayonet that goes ahead and that gets rid of all your antique firearms. Anything with a dropping floor plate, which is a magazine. And it even says in this bill specifically, semi-automatic pistols with a detachable magazine. That's every semi-automatic pistol. So they're being very deceitful in the definitions. So that bill is not an assault weapons ban, it's an all weapons ban. And so that one is very scary. And then move on to the magazine ban. That one also lists dropping floor plate, which is all your semi-automatic pistols. It's just, though, it's deceitful. And I want to also point out one of them that's very deceitful would be the one that changes getting your concealed carry to the Attorney General only. This is the kind of stuff that really infuriates me. So in that bill, which is of course pushed by the Attorney General, he gives himself an immunity clause so that if he denies you a concealed carry permit, that does not allow you to take him to court or to get an appeals process for not issuing. And he also tucks in the school bill in that bill. So in case the school bill doesn't pass, he's tucked it into this one now. So it's this kind of deceit that's really infuriating. And the games that are played up there it's just horrible. And I would love to see some of this be able to be changed. And I have actually talked to other legislators about a different type of process when bills are being submitted, because it's just, you have to be an attorney to even understand what these bills are saying. And then they tuck in all of these little other things that they want. And it's just, it's not transparent.
And yet they get away with it.
Yep.
And that's because elections matter. And I know we're going to talk about it at the very end, because it's clear that your organization, the umbrella under which all these different 2A rights organizations sits, are going to become more politically active. And you have to. I mean, we've got a governor right now in place who has positioned himself as being a moderate on the Second Amendment. He's not a moderate on the Second Amendment. I pinned him down to that, and I will continue to pin him down to that. And he needs, as a result, because of this duplicity, he needs to pay for it electorally. It's in my humble opinion, Dan McKee is governor now because he won the LG race largely on the back of folks in yellow shirts.
Yep.
Who
We
support
definitely, we promoted him. We
Right.
supported him. We promoted him. You know, even though he wasn't always like 100% gun guy, we gave him a lot of credit and respected him for, you know, reaching out to our community in the past. And then, you know, he had the real opportunity to come out, and it's not just on the gun bills, but on a lot of bills. He's just come out, and I kind of am disappointed because I really thought that he would have had an opportunity to shine and be a good leader. And instead he's he's just bowing to some of the progressives up there. And it's very disappointing because I kind of thought that we were finally going to have a fair governor, and now it's just completely gone the other way.
Right. And again, here's a guy who would position himself as a common sense, moderate, listen to all sides kind of guy. And that's why I believe he's an asterisk. I call him Governor Asterisk because he will be a 2-year governor. And what's astonishing to me is just on a sheer base political level is that he caters to an extreme wing. And listen, I've got a lot of progressive friends, and we have agreement on some issues. But he caters to this sort of control element, both on the side of the pandemic and now particularly so on the side of folks, again, who would deny your fundamental right to bear arms. And it's astonishing to me because they're not going to support him in a primary. They're not.
No.
And so just if we're looking at things just on a base political level, forget about what's right and wrong, forget about morality, forget about decency, forget about, the observation of civil rights and moral rights and natural rights. Just throw that all hell out for a second. This is Rhode Island, right? What he's doing is he's signing his political death warrant. He won't make it past a primary. Moderate Democrats will vote against him. Independents like me will take the opportunity to register as a Democrat and vote against him. And because ultimately, if he's going to continue to cater to organizations that would deny us our fundamental rights, what's the difference between him and a progressive? There is none.
There is no difference.
No. And he's already displayed an arrogance in terms of public questioning at press conferences. It's just time to, on a political level, in terms of peaceful political level, to reassert the rights of the individuals in the state. It just is. What is there a legislative companion bill in the Senate for the we'll call it the medical disclosure legislation?
That one didn't come up in here in the Senate.
Interesting.
There are some bills that do touch on mental health, but the companion bill to that one is not on deck. Right. But that's not to say that it's not going to come out of committee on the House side, and then they might have a bill waiting in the wings, and then modify it and then bring it into judiciary. So I think that in the House judiciary hearings, we brought up a lot of good points about that have them rethinking some of the logistics of that bill, because logistically with HIPAA, that bill is very cumbersome, and really I don't see how that you would be able to get all the gun stores to be able to be HIPAA certified, have safe storage for people's records, know how to learn how to read medical records, which is not their expertise. So there's a lot of things wrong with that. And then we also brought forward, like, what is the definition of mental illness? Are you now never going to be able to own a firearm because you went to grief counseling, or because you took Wellbutrin for quitting smoking, or had postpartum depression back when you had a child? Like, what is the definition of having a mental health issue? So we brought up a lot of that, and I think that they're kind of listening to that.
On that note, I'd love to understand your opinion. Is this legislation poorly written from your perspective as a lobbyist and as an activist, or is it intentionally written to be vague so that it can be interpreted judicially aggressively?
I think it's a mix of both. I think that the bills that the Attorney General was involved in is meant to be very vague, specifically. I think that the bigger bills, like the assault weapons ban, which, the Attorney General did sign on to, but these other really egregious bills, they're written by people from out of state that with all the out of state money and influence, because these bills are the same in a lot of other states. So we know that the language on this is intentional on their part, although a lot of our legislators don't even understand the language. Even the people that have sponsored the bills do not understand the basic definitions of some of these bills and all of the other little nuances that are in them. That's being pushed by a higher agenda that's not even in this state.
Wow. And talk to that. I mean, are you aware of the names of some of the organizations? Are they contributing politically to supporters of gun grabbing?
Oh, yeah. There's so we've traced $1.3 million just last year, and that comes from the Giffords PAC.
Wait, on $1.3 million?
Yes.
How?
I have proof of $1.3 million so far, and I haven't stopped looking yet. So it comes in, it's a tangled web here. It's I need a whiteboard, really. I should have a whiteboard to explain all this. But yeah, so what they do is they have these circles of nonprofits. So like Giffords PAC pays into Women Votes pays into Rhode Island Values Project. Every town pays into Rhode Island Values Project. Rhode Island Values Project pays all the expenses for a lot of the candidates. And then you have Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood put in $270,000 into Rhode Island Values Project. And if you don't know, Rhode Island Values Project isn't even an entity in the state. It's actually collaboration between Planned Parenthood and Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence, who now is Rhode Island Votes also. So they're all intermingled, but we have it's Bloomberg, it's the Giffords PAC, it's a lot of very wealthy women that are from Barrington and Newport. So it's quite a web. I actually am amazed at how they're doing it. And I can't believe that it's legal the way that they're not transparent about the campaign finance. And now they have all registered as nonprofits, even though all they do is political advocacy. So, there's a lot of questions I have on that, and we're looking into that because they always say, "Oh, NRA funds you, and NRA, put in $5,000 last year into our lobbyists, and the rest of us did all the work, and we're all really volunteers. We're not getting paid."
Right.
And on D, if you base pay, if you look on Indeed, Moms Demand Action's hiring base pay $124,000 a year.
Wow. And are we aware how much Linda Finn makes, former state house denizen?
On the books, she brings in, I think, about 12 to 16,000 a year. But there's other dealings there that we are still looking into because she's not completely transparent about her salary and how she's tied in, because she's an executive director of Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence. So we only can see her lobbying fees, and her lobbying fees are between 12 and 16,000. And that Kat Kerwin too is also a paid lobbyist, which is kind of a conflict of interest, I would guess. But but I'm a law-abiding citizen, so
there's that. There we go again. I'm going to ask you a half serious but a question with a smile. Do you ever wonder what it would have been like, just say 10 or 20 years ago? You said screw it, sold out, gave up your principles, became completely oblivious to the Constitution, and throw your hat in with one of these organizations and make some dough and get some connections and get that sweetheart deal. What was it? McShee's one of the first acts he did as governor was was not to disinvest from, racist organizations, not to settle the pension crisis, not to reopen our economy and end the executive order, but was to hire the son of the mayor of Johnson for $93,000 for a political patronage job. That's everybody makes. It's sort of like Oprah, right? Everybody wins a car. Everybody gets $100,000 in if you work for Dan McKee, and why not?
Right.
It's. So did you ever consider that, maybe just going back in time, doing the rewind, and saying,
I don't think I could live with myself. I really
damn you.
don't, because I'm passionate about our Constitution. I'm passionate about our rights. I'm passionate about our gun community. So there's never been a time where I would ever have thought to do anything differently. My only regret is that I don't have more time, because I have to work. I have 2 jobs, I have to work. So that's my only regret. I wish that I could, just do this full time and just commit more. But unfortunately, I have to have a job.
There you go again, having bills and responsibilities. I don't, the game of legislative whack-a-mole that's taking place right now, because it's important to remember, going back onto the House bills, they've all been set aside for further study. Now, years ago, that meant something. That meant, well, we'll see you next year. Bill, true. Let's have a true or false question here. Bills held for further study can be revived if, in fact, the House suspends its rules, can it?
Right.
Ding, ding, ding,
right.
ding, ding.
And those bills actually, if you looked at the way they were worded this year, it used to be the bills were in hearing. Now, if you read the bills, it's for hearing or consideration, which means they've already changed the rules this year, so that if they decided, they could have actually voted those bills right to the floor, which that had never been like that before. So we did address that too, because that's very bad. There's not even a cooling off period. Just vote them right to the floor. That's unheard of.
Right.
So these bills can come out anytime.
The analogy I always draw, and it's kind of a graphic one, is if anyone's ever seen the movie Fatal Attraction, think Glenn Close coming out of the bathtub. Sorry. Yeah, maybe it's good. It's a Friday night. It's late. Yeah, this is not a family show, but it's literally that analogy is apt, isn't it? The full horror of the idea. I mean, there are no rules, just right. If you're a big fan of big government, you do what you want. It's all that matters is winning, and facts really don't have any place in the
That's been a challenge too. It's been a challenge because, a lot of our guys are, they're so passionate about the Second Amendment, and they can't understand. I get accused a lot of being too politically correct. In my head, I'm not politically correct at all. Just FYI. But we have to talk to these legislators, find out what makes them think, what makes them tick. So we have to know how to approach them. And it's really sad when you can't even use the fact that it's a Second Amendment right. And now we have a president that says no amendment is absolute. You're trying to explain to these people that is not a conversation, because they do not care about the Constitution. So you cannot use that as our defense. They don't care. And that's pretty frustrating to a lot of people, because they're like, why are we doing this? This is our Second Amendment right. But the bottom line is these new progressives, they don't care. So you cannot go to them, screaming, oh, it's my Second Amendment right. We have to find a different way to communicate with them. And then that's when people start accusing me of being too politically correct. It's not because I want to be, because by God, I'd love to just be able to depend on our Constitution, but the way that they're chipping away at it, we have to find a way to save ourselves, and we have to do it tactfully.
And there's a level of perfection that is expected in us, both in our approach. You're right, tactfully, professionally, which I'm proud to say that most folks who are in what I'll call the liberty community are just that. I mean, they do that. They behave in an adult manner, and it's tough because these are emotional issues. And I see regular folks who are not in the bubble, as I like to call it, politically, like say you and I are, just regular folks, great people, great lives, great families, great Rhode Islanders, who just, when confronted with this wall that's called the Rhode Island General Assembly, just are incredibly frustrated and just incredibly upset, and yet they still manage to carry themselves with dignity. We're expected to be factually perfect. If we do anything or accidentally, even unintentionally, are not spot on, we're held to a level of, if you will, a level of inspection that the other side doesn't. The other side can just pretty much make up things as they go along, and it's only because of the quick wit and the quick response and the overall knowledge base that exists in the 2A community, the yellow shirt community, that they're able to. And I watch it happen in the House hearings. People were called out time and time and time again because they were just making it up, just making it the hell up. So
because that side works on emotion. They only, they get up there and they talk about only emotion. And then we get up there and we have, actual facts, concrete facts that are pertinent to Rhode Island. And, and we've had to really go above and beyond to even get that information because we have an attorney general that refuses to give us usable reports. Imagine that our legislators are up there and they don't even have usable data to be making these bills. They don't know if an AR has ever been used in a crime. They don't know how many people have been plea bargained out, early released, and gun charges are not even brought to court. So they don't even have that usable data in front of them, yet they're making all of these laws. And that's very frustrating because it baffles me that they don't educate themselves, and they don't even have the means to educate themselves because they're being blocked by that information.
Right.
So it's frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the 10 minutes or so that we've got left, let's do some analysis of there's some legislation that's been born of the 2A community, good bills as we like to call them. Bring us up to date on what opportunities exist in this legislative, like this gun day, I guess we call it now, where I think it's 3,000 or 4,000 gun bills are put up in one day, where you pretty much got to have artificial intelligence at work in order to respond in a momentary notice. And but there are opportunities here. So tell us about those.
Mm-hmm. So the first good bill we're trying again is to get the Attorney General to give us usable data. We want him to give us a report that we can use so that we have good, accurate data as far as crime and weapons used in committing crimes in the state. So that's a good one. We have a taser bill, which is also good for people that want to protect themselves and use non-lethal force. So that's a good one. We have another bill that's kind of an offset of the gun-free zone because we want to have a school security committee formed that we can talk about school safety to make our schools safer. We have reciprocity bills. We have a couple reciprocity bills that one of them is to allow people in Massachusetts and Connecticut that we have reciprocity because we have a couple of those parts of the state where, you have to go into Massachusetts, or Massachusetts people have to cut through Rhode Island and Connecticut too, down like in the westerly section. So then there's a silencer bill that mirrors the ATF They have to have the stamps and the tax stamps through the ATF to own a silencer. And we have, well, actually, we have a couple of different reciprocity bills. And then we have, going through my list here. Oh, access to public records regarding firearm related crimes. That makes sure that everything gets reported properly. So, you know, we're trying to do our part to make the street, to make Rhode Island safer by having these bills that are focused on where we know the problems are. You know, with all these mass shootings that have happened recently, you know, certainly doesn't help us at all. And it actually spreads everybody further apart and doesn't bring everybody to the table. And I hate it when it becomes, you know, like the gun people, like, oh, because of mental illness, and the antis are like, oh, it's because of gun people. But, you know, really, I feel like a lot of these are because we're losing our kids at an early age. When you start reading the data, I really wish that we could do more about kids and programs for kids and getting them. Why don't we stop them before they become bad guys? You know, Linda Finn put out a post the other day on Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence Facebook page about bad guys. I'm like, well, how about we come to the table and we start working on these kids before they become bad guys? What about that? And I never get a response, but that's neither here nor there.
No, I think we are now at the point where we've got a government that doesn't feel they need to respond to us. They're completely dismissive of us, and I've seen that in. Listeners may not be aware. I do the press conference, as they say now, every Thursday, and I've done it for about 6, 7 months, maybe even longer, and. I ask questions I try to ask questions that are fact laden, have a point, are tied to the pandemic, but are not what I call COVID porn. I'm not particularly interested in obsessing over whether 6 people sit at a table or 8 people sit at a table, except to ask the question, what was the underlying science that allowed you the determination to arrive at each? And then I ask economic questions. They're not even interested. They're not even pretending to answer. I'm very disappointed in this administration because at least Gina Raimondo would answer the question. Usually on a personal level, I didn't like the answer, but I'm there to quote unquote report on it, ask a question and report the answer, not to interpret it. But this administration doesn't feel like they need to really answer to anything. They're there to put out their point. And this is a reflective, I think, of every step in the legislative process this go around. They made their decisions. Yeah. They have all the answers, and that's it. And we have to show them otherwise. What you've mentioned, I've heard you allude to the fact that you are, as an organization, going to be much more politically overt. And to be fair to you folks, in the short couple of years that some of this group has coalesced, this coalition of organizations has coalesced, in the short period of time that's happened, you folks have managed to, and I'll say this for the second night in a row, hold the barbarians at the gate. And that's to your eternal credit. And folks need to understand the monetary, the emotional, and the time component in all of that. There are people who routinely don't see their families at night in order to ensure that all Rhode Islanders have access to their basic civil liberties and their basic rights. And that takes a toll. And there are folks like you, and there's a number of them. I can't even begin to try and list all the folks that I've just an exemplary commitment, take this very personally, and they show up. And that is what has to happen. Now, let's look on the flip side, if you will, of this is this heinous setup here at the State House. You know, people don't have to drive anymore. There's no excuse not to be able to, and I know it's inconvenient the way they handle it, but if you can't invest a few hours of your time, not the nights and the weeks and that some folks do. We understand people are at different places in their lives, small children, job concerns, health issues, aware of all that. But everybody should be able to contribute to Monday night's efforts. Everybody at some level. And you folks have reduced it really to straightforward. I mean, for most people, we're talking about probably 10 or 15 minutes of their time, aren't we?
Yeah, if that, because with that website and Rifle, they did fabulous job on that website. All you have to do is essentially click a button and fill in your name and address. It's that simple. And that is very frustrating for us, because I can tell you since January, I probably haven't had more than 1 or 2 nights off. And my family just knows I'm MIA during this time of the year. So for people not to be able to go onto a website and click a couple buttons to send an email or take a phone call and just say, I am opposed to these gun bills, it's that simple. So, and I really, we really need people to step up, because at the end of the day, if this stuff goes through, I don't want anybody looking at me and saying I didn't do enough. And that a lot of times, unfortunately, happens. It happens to all of the groups, that all of us that are working together. Then it becomes our fault because we just didn't do enough, when some people can't even click a button and send an email. So,
Right.
yeah.
No, it's
And it
time.
also works against us too, because we have held them off for so many years that they think, oh, they've got this, they're going to hold them off again. I don't need to get involved, but you know what? If this year is completely different, and
Yep.
I'm going to tell you, they have the votes. And if people are not stepping up, it is not going to be for lack of us trying. It's going to be for lack of people not stepping up and defending their own rights, and taking that 1 or 2 minutes to click that button and fill in your name and address on an email. And that's going to be pretty disheartening for me, and as well as all the other people that are working so hard to make it such a simple process. We cannot make it any more simple than sending the email for you. And
Right.
and we can't do that. So so we really need people just to take that few minutes and participate in Monday.
Absolutely. So again, let's go through all of this. Your website. Also, how can folks kick in some money? This is not an inexpensive effort. We've talked time and time again about the time investment of time that so many volunteers like yourself commit on an extreme level, quite frankly, to the detriment of their jobs, their families, their lives, their businesses, at a time when a lot of people simply want to be home with their families all the time. Understandable, but we need either your time or we need your money. It'd be great if you can give us both, but how can folks contribute to the effort financially?
Okay, so the first thing is you could become a member of either Rhode Island Revolver and Rifle, the Federated, Sportsman, Second Amendment Coalition. You can contribute to either one of the PACs. We have Go PAC in Rhode Island Revolver and Rifle, and then there's the Second Amendment PAC. There's also the Civil Defense Fund for if we have to go to court if any of these bills pass. And the other thing is, and we do post a lot on Facebook, is support the candidates that are supporting us, because they need money in order to stay where they are. And so we push that a lot. And it doesn't even have to be a lot of money. Look at how many people went to the rally last year. If you have every one of those people just chipping in $10, that's a huge amount of money to support candidates that are up there fighting. And we have a lot of candidates that are working hard on all sides of the spectrum, because they know how egregious these bills are. So those are the ways that you can contribute.
Folks, you have all weekend to get it together on this. Maybe tomorrow, skip donkeys once, send in $10, $20. The aggregate impact of that will be tremendous. And it will also send a signal to the volunteers who are working on behalf that there are a lot of people out there who give a damn, may not be able to get involved personally yet at this point in their life, but certainly can find a few dollars to help the efforts that are being made on their behalf. The second, of course, is to invest a few minutes in your personal liberty. We, as Rhode Island citizens, are not going to be given the opportunity to vote on these bills. We're just not. So quite frankly, your willingness to send an email or a phone call is going to be your vote. And you need to think of it as that's your one opportunity to weigh in this. Brenda's a very polite person. If you can't invest 10 or 15 minutes in your civil liberties this weekend, then I frankly don't know if you deserve them. That's me. That's station management, by the way. It is the opinion of station management that if you can't invest something in it, we've all got to have skin in this game. We are on the verge of a number of different levels, and we're focusing with Brenda on your Second Amendment right. Again, your fundamental right to bear arms in your own self-defense, as well as engage in the sporting lifestyle. But we are on the precipice of a dozen issues, all of which are fundamental threats to our personal liberties. It's real. You know, for the last how many years, we've always joked about that sort of Rhode Island gallows humor. If they get in charge and do what they want, they're going to do that. And, you know, we were looked upon as conspiracy theorists, when in fact it turns out we were conspiracy realists. Mm-hmm. It's up to us. Everyone needs to look at the mirror this weekend, get their bleep together, and just do the right thing. Each individual knows what the right thing is for them, but as a result of the incredibly hard work of a finite group of people, you've been given a second lease on life in fighting for your personal liberties. Don't screw it up. Brenda, as always, you know my heart's with you. I can't express enough how much I admire the commitment your organization, your leaders have personally expended on behalf of so many people for a cause that they'll never get any credit for. You won't get some state job for it. You won't get some sweetheart deal in your business for it. Nothing. You'll, in the words of the immortal Judge Smale from the greatest movie ever made, Caddyshack, you'll get nothing and you'll like it. but
Yes.
but that's the truth, isn't it? I mean, really?
Yes.
I'd be hard pressed to find a group of people who work to an extreme level on a cause because it's simply the right thing to do. So my heart's with you. We're going to be replaying this all weekend. Going to beat it into people's heads right everywhere.
Please.
This is going to be shared everywhere to Facebook. You're going to go on to your horticulture page. You know,
And we're going to be there.
and you're going to see this freaking interview. I can guarantee that.
Yep.
All right.
Well,
You're going
this
to be
is the start.
you're going to be at the
If
drug.
we lose this,
Yeah.
if we lose this battle, it's a domino effect. It is a
We're done.
domino effect. And that's why even if you do not own a firearm or never intend to own a firearm, unfortunately, this is the beginning of the domino effect that's going to affect everybody's lives. So people have to get involved.
Absolutely. Brenda Jacob. I'd list the organizations, but let's just say she's involved in every single aspect of the support of, the generation of, every aspect of the sporting, the hunting, as life, as well as the defense of your right to bear arms. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Radio Network at coalitionradionetwork.com, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the original mothership at coalitionradio.us. If this might be the first time you're ever hearing us, just if you could take a moment, like us, share us, subscribe to us, all the different things you do with social media. Social media for independent media is our lifeblood. It's the way that we get to talk about what I'll call third rail issues, like your right to bear arms. It's the way that we rise above the noise that the conventional media will have. No one will cover stories like this with the passion that a group of independent media types here in Rhode Island do, with the commitment, the personal commitment. I aspire to be as good at this as your leaders in the 2A community are. They're actually, a bunch of them, including Brenda, are my role models.
Thank you.
Folks, we're going to be on the air all weekend sporadically. We're going to be doing a lot of in-the-field interviews. We're going to be talking about the employment crisis now that faces Rhode Island businesses extensively, as well as Tues-Friday this weekend. Stay tuned. You're going to see a lot of us for the next few weeks. I apologize in advance. and have a wonderful night. Brenda, thanks again. I love you. All right, buddy?
Thank you.
God bless.